Good evening and welcome to the May 3rd, 2021 Guilderland Central School District Board of Education meeting. Would you all please silence your cell phone and recite the pledge? I pledge of allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, liberty and justice for all. Okay, so we have two items on the agenda tonight, and I'm actually going to do number 2 first because I don't think it's going to take very long. It's just reviewing the process. So if you guys go down to Superintendent Evaluation Timeline Review. So today, sorry. So Dr. Wiles, were you able to submit your evaluation today?
Well, I'm almost done. Before I go to bed tonight, I've got one section left, so okay. I'll submit it tonight.
Sounds good. So Dr. Wiles will submit it tonight, and everybody should have got the link that I sent you, the Super Eval link. And were you able to log in? Okay, so make sure that you can do that. And so I think after Dr. Wiles submits hers, we all have our independent ones to do. So we do them individually. And I'll send a reminder out probably mid-May, just so you're not at the very end trying to do a lot, because there's several different sections. I don't remember how many sections there are, but it's not like it takes up a little bit of time, so you don't want to wait till the very end. And then I will take all of the I think Gloria and I will take all of the reports from everybody and then consolidate them. And then we can meet and come up with some things to submit to Dr. Wiles. Does that sound like a good plan, or does anyone have questions about that?
Seema, I just don't remember how to log in.
Okay, I think it's the Guilderland email, but like I don't know your password, but I think if you just, there must be something where like you can click forgot password. It should go to your Guilderland email. And you should be able to set it up. If you don't, then let me know so I can ask, I don't know, Dr. Wiles or whoever at the district to help set it up.
Thank you.
Yeah, you're welcome. Because I was here when we started doing this, it was paper form, and then it kind of transitioned over to this system, but I wasn't board president, I don't think, when we did this. So I'm sure someone at the district could help, but I know I had to do the password reset, but you should be able to with your Guilderland email.
There's a chat feature when you're in there. Once you get logged in, and if you run into any trouble, there's a chat feature, and they're terrific about like answering. But it has to be between 9 and 5. They're not staffed into the wee hours. So if you're during the typical 9 to 5 hours, someone can help you with any technical issues.
Sounds good. Does anybody else have any questions about that process? Okay, so I'll send a reminder email out, like I mentioned, in a couple of weeks. And if you could do that before May 31st, or by the latest May 31st, and then that way we'll have 2 weeks to review them and consolidate them. So, all right, so we'll move on to the second item. These are the Board of Ed goals. These are working goals that we set in September. So I really just wanted to, when we first thought about putting goals together, the idea was to check in, right? Not just write them and then never look at them again. And so we had these in September. Ideally, it would have been nice to look at, maybe halfway during the year, but I think, all considering everything that's happened this year, it's good that we're able to get it now before the end of the school year. And, and then we can go from there. So I just thought we'd go through each one of the main topics, and then within that table we have some specific goals written, and it might be a good idea to just give an update on what you think or where we are with this process, if you think we need to tweak any of the goals or maybe hold off. I know with setting these goals with COVID at the beginning of the year was kind of hard to predict what we would know. So if you don't have any questions, we'll go ahead and start with the first one, which is close the achievement or opportunity gap. So in that column S, we have 2 specific goals that we stated in the fall about increasing student achievement and initiating conversation in PD around alternative assessment models. We did talk, I think, at the beginning about the year about the timeline for this and how much can we really do this year. And so I don't know if you have thoughts on that. Does anybody have thoughts about that? Barb?
I don't think there's much we can do about it. This was such an unusual, strange year that, you know, everything that you read, the kids are going to be further behind than they were. And I think that's, you know, as we go forward, we can certainly start looking at some of the data. I mean, some of the testing isn't even being done. And I just think we might have to put that on the shelf for the year.
I agree. Gloria?
Yeah, I had that first comment is mine, I guess. There's insufficient data, I think. We just can't gather enough data to support making any decisions, at least legitimate decisions that we can move forward upon with the data that we have, which is pretty much non-existent. I feel that this should be a fresh start goal. We should be starting fresh with this in September, gathering the data, looking at it partway through at the end of next year, and then we can probably make some predictions or ideas can come forward. But with the data we have now, I don't think we should even try.
I mean, I feel similarly. I know last year or in the fall, we thought maybe we didn't really know right at all what would happen at the end of the year. I'm surprised that they're even doing any testing. I don't really know what they're going to get out of this testing. Like I know my daughter had math test today. So I know some testing is happening, but all the remote students can't do testing. Is that correct, Dr. Wiles? Dr. Wiles, that remote students were not able to?
Well, some of them were, but if they had not come in by the time we had the outage of our technology, then we ended up canceling because we were just so far behind with everybody and not sure about, you know, how quickly our internet connections would be stable. So we just decided not to do the rest of the remote. And many of them were very disappointed, but, you know, we just couldn't do it. And we ended up not testing 8th grade in ELA either for similar reasons.
So the test that students did take, though, like this spring, or that they will take, I know the Regents exams, they'll know the scores earlier, but the other ones that are like the Common Core ones, they'll find out right in the fall. But are you going to do anything with that, or is that going to be kind of throwaway?
It's really hard to know what the testing data is going to mean. I also learned that many of the questions on the test were also on the state ed website as practice materials. So students around the state actually saw the passages ahead of time. So between inconsistent assessments across groups of students and the potential lack of security around the questions, I really don't know what conclusions anyone could draw from this data. So I honestly, if we're going to look at data in the fall, I would want to think about different data points that we might consider, and maybe we focus more on social emotional data than test data. So I think that's a really interesting thing to think about before we start collecting that data. Like, what is it that we want to know?
Barb?
Sort of related but unrelated, I made the comment that, you know, a number of people have asked me what's happened to Guilderland. Why are we at number 11 when we always used to be in the top 4? And I don't know what criteria are used, but when I looked at some of the schools that were above us this year, I was shocked. So maybe Marie or somebody can, what data do these entities use to rate schools? As I said, over the years, we've always really been very close to our suburban council peers, and this year we're way off. So what did they use?
So Barbara, I don't know the full answer to that, but I did look at that. It's the ranking of the high school only, so it's not the district weighting. And there were some data points in level of AP participation and percentage of students passing at least one AP test. And those numbers looked, from what was in the report that I read online, they looked low to me, like not typical. So I think we need to dig into them. If they are actually low, then I think we have to ask the question of why is that? And if they're not accurate, then we still have to ask the question, why is that?
Lori, do you have your hand up, or is that from before? Oh, from before.
It really makes a difference, you know, when I think I wrote, when we moved to Guilderland, we were coming from California, had no idea what anything was good or bad in this area. And the first thing a young couple will do is ask, what are the good school districts? And they pulled out this business review and showed us a few other things. And so we chose Guilderland. And, you know, when my kids are going to school, as I said, we're in the top ranking. So any information that you can find out as to, you know, what has happened, because it makes a big difference for new families coming in. It really does.
I think I remember we talked probably in the fall about this, Barb, but I feel like it's a balance of that, because like you said, it does matter to people who read those things. But then there's also the, I guess, my perspective of the tests don't say everything. Not that they don't matter at all, but I don't think that they address everything. And from my perspective, I know my kids are not like little anymore, but I feel like I do talk to other families who look at other things too, like the size of the school and the different kind of opportunities. But yeah, it's a balance of that with the rankings, which I don't know, I kind of stopped paying attention to them, but I know that, like you said, some people do pay attention to them. But I don't know. Go ahead, Gloria.
Did you call me, Seema?
Well, you're unmuted, and I could hear your fan or whatever, so.
Well, let me know when I can speak. My hand is up.
Go ahead.
I'm not sure where that piece comes, this rating stuff, in the business review, and where that fits. I don't know if it fits under this goal, closing the achievement gap and the opportunity gap. It doesn't quite fit there. So I don't know if it fits under these priorities. I understand Barbara's concern about it, but I, like you, am not, you know, I think it's an interesting question to raise. We should look into it and find out, you know, what the status is, but I'm not worried about it, and I don't see it as part of these goals.
So then would it make sense to, I guess, hold off with these goals? Because we really have, I mean, this specific one is focused on achievement and, you know, different alternative models of, instead of testing, or the alternative assessments, which I really would love to invest more time in. But I think, I mean, with everything that's happened this year and more recently, this is probably not the best time to even start thinking about this. So maybe when the school year is over, or whatever you all think. It sounds good to table this. That's an easy one.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think it sounds great. I'm sorry. I didn't wait to be called on, Seema.
No.
I guess my concern is, I mean, I think that's fine for this, but how, and you may not know this yet, Marie, but how are the teachers and faculty going to assess knowledge, like a baseline knowledge at the beginning of the school year 2021-22, just with the expectation that there is some learning loss, for lack of a better phrase?
So you might recall that when we were getting ready to reopen in September, we had a number of subcommittees looking at various questions. So our instructional subcommittee has reconstituted and they're meeting again. And that is one of the questions that they're asking. So how will we take stock in September of where kids are? But they're also doing that in the spring, not so much worried about state assessments, but Fontes and Pinnell reading benchmarks and other classroom-based benchmarks to see where are students. So that committee is working on the academic side of things. And then there's a social emotional subcommittee and I think it comes later in this, who's looking at how do we assess where our students are from the social emotional side of a return from school, particularly for those kids who weren't in school, all that time. So those are working topics in those subcommittees right now.
Sorry, muted. Blanca and then Ben.
Marie, I seem to recall the catch-up funding, right? The funding from the federal aid that's allocated for the catching up. Was that supposed to be in the summer? I thought I remembered it had to be, or was supposed to be in the summer.
Some of it is for summer work, but we do have some summer programming planned, but it's actually getting funded from, there's like 3 buckets of federal money. This is bucket number 2 that we knew about a while ago. So we will have some, for K-8 students, opportunities for kind of catch up, for lack of better words, in ELA and in math, plus our regular summer school for students with disabilities. So we will use some of that, but we will continue to have the extra bucket of federal funds that came just around budget adoption time that we'll have use for over the next 2 to 3 years. So we can use that money for these kinds of programs once we see the extent to which certain populations of students might need some extra help.
Okay, yeah, I was just, to Rebecca's point, then we might need to do some sort of measurement, right, to see who needs it in the summer. And so then that couldn't wait necessarily.
Right, they're working on it now.
Ben?
So, I think I saw in the document that Seema was typing, she said, what do we really want to know about students? Academically, ? Social emotional. The ranking question, I think, matters if you're outside the district and there's nothing else to go on, right? Once you're in district and you can kind of test the product yourself, if you don't like it, you leave. If you like it, you stay. And my thought is that in the goal, it has, increase student achievement, and then also initiate conversations about alternative assessments. But we don't even know how alternative assessments would play into rankings, right? Because usually those are based on test scores to some degree. And so I think there's some tension here, and I think that maybe it's worth exploring that question of what are we actually trying to measure and boost, right? Achieve what? One of my students in E=MC² wrote a book at the end of the year, full book on morality without God, and there was no grades in that class, right? He didn't get an A for that. He got an S+, right? Satisfactory, a little more than satisfactory. And if we go that direction, right, a more progressive ed kind of approach to education, then it might be worth kind of reworking this goal to highlight that what we're trying to boost is not, we're definitely trying to close the gap on some of these state scores, right? We're using that data, but our ultimate goal is to boost everyone to something different, something better, something more individualized. And if we can brand that, right? If the first thing you see when you come to the Gill Schools website is kind of this brand of who we want to be, whether that's, whether part of that focus is equity and part of that focus might be, alternative assessments or whatever other kind of direction that we're moving. If we kind of curate this brand over time as we kind of do this work, such that Gittelen becomes known as the school who did X, kind of like we all know Queensbury as the school that redid their high school, right? They had a big plan and a big capital project, and that's what they did. And if Gittelen kind of had a brand, then maybe people from the outside would be able to look in and identify the things they want from a school district out of what we're putting out. And then those test scores, serve a different function of making sure that no one's getting left behind.
I mean, I'm in total agreement with Ben that that the test scores tell something, and some people look at that, but it's really not everything. And what do we really want students to get out of going to school? We want them to get a high test score that might not mean anything. I think it was several years ago, I served on the business council for work, but at Tech Valley. And I remember they had business people from all over, and it was kind of like an advisory council to get feedback. And they were doing really great things, and their students were growing and learning, et cetera. But their test scores, I think at that point, I don't remember how many years ago, weren't like that great yet. But so that was something that they were trying to focus on, but also asking these business people, like, these test scores mean one thing, but there's all of these other things that we're doing that students are learning and enjoying in school, et cetera. So I guess trying to get feedback from them about, what actually matters. Like, do you care, about this or that? And so I'm in total agreement. I don't know when, but I would love to rework this goal to think about what do we want our kids, our students to get out of school. Oh, sorry, is muted.
Okay, thanks. Yes, I agree with Seema and Ben. As an example, my daughter went to a Montessori school for kindergarten, and frankly, we just stopped being able to afford it. But it was wonderful. The students can take the state tests, and many do, just to kind of see how they rank in the state and compare themselves. But they're not graded, and they have capstone assignments and projects, and everything's very much tailored to the individual student. And I really felt like those kids loved to learn. I feel to this day that some of my daughter's already starting college, and she's 16, and I think she's advanced because of that time she was in Montessori school, where they taught her to love to learn, and it wasn't about the grades and it wasn't about the testing. I think there's something to be said for that. Anyway, the point is, I think we should look at what other districts have been successful with, or other private schools.
Gloria?
I like the way the goal is framed in terms of beginning a conversation, because I think that's the conversation that our staff has to have along with us, but also our community, because we reflect what they want from us to do. So I like the way the goal, I don't think we're going to solve that right now, because I think it's very complex, but I do think we need to initiate that conversation seriously. Is about the question, what do we want our students to get out of our course, say, or our year in school, or 4 years at Guilderland? What does that education look like? And pose that to our staff, our educators, to wrestle with.
And I know I'm speaking a little bit from like my work and here on the college side, but like the test scores, like an AP exam, I feel like we'll get pushback if we are thinking about this in like long-term kind of thing, that some people really care about the opportunities that they have for AP tests, and it's all like, there's so much stress about the AP test. And I'll just say from my work side that there's a lot of people who also know that kids are really good and structured at taking those tests and still come and still have to retake a course, or it doesn't really mean that, I shouldn't say that, right? Because it does take away credits if they get credit that counts towards that. But that doesn't necessarily mean they know the content really well. It doesn't mean that there was other learning that they could have done that was also just as good. It's just, I think, like a philosophy about what we value in education. And I know that there's a lot of people that I would say that probably think more traditionally about test scores and, oh, you can, I'm not saying that tests are bad. There's a place for tests, but I think there's just too much emphasis on that. And so I would love to change this a bit too, but maybe you're right, Gloria, the way it's phrased right now is okay. But this is not the best time to start. Luciano?
I agree with a lot of what's been said. We really have some good ideas. It's not going to be easy to do going forward, but it's definitely a good start. One thing that maybe we could consider, well, I guess I have more of a question than anything, but the goals under the title is closing the achievement or opportunity gap. I guess, could we clarify that as a board, like what we mean by that and how like addressing assessments and everything plays into that?
I'll just tell you my opinion because I know that I think about achievement gap by looking just looking at test scores, I think from ESSA and looking at how students did. And then I don't think it was just me because I don't think I would add that, but it was, I mentioned using the term opportunity gaps too, because I thought that the test scores show one thing, but the test is like, there's like an assumption that everyone has the same opportunity, and then this is what they get at the results. But we know that's just not true. So I guess I was thinking of the both layers of the achievement, but what opportunities are being missed too for students. I don't know, that's what I thought, but I'll open that up. Anybody else has? Good question. Oh, Ben?
Yeah, no, I think, we want to make sure that we're serving all students. And one of the things that I like to say is you can't plan children, and you shouldn't even try. So it's not really that we're trying to force outcomes on the kids. It's that if the district is not performing in some way or is dropping the ball in some area, that's our goal, to make sure that we're not doing that and that we are serving all students.
Sorry, I'm typing too. Gloria?
In a way, we have, I guess thinking about it, we have made some progress here because we talked about opportunity gap before, a long time ago when we looked at those ESSA results. And one of the things we've moved on is this whole idea of inclusion and making sure that, kids aren't kept out of classes just because of the X, Y, or Z. And that we've had that history, but that kids who want to take the class, they're open to take the class. That's something that we've moved on. And also within our DEI committee, the Diversity, Equity, and Inclusion Committee, that has been a point of discussion that all students need the opportunity and should be offered the opportunity to either take a course or move forward or and not be pigeonholed and held back because of who they are. So I think we've made some at least initial discussions about this, and I think it's on our radar, but I think it's an important piece for us to keep working at.
Blanca?
So building upon what Gloria said and Ben said, I also think that our statement encompasses the advanced student, because I felt like my daughter was particularly ceilinged, and then she didn't get into Tech Valley High, so we had to figure out a different plan for her. And to be honest, we lost a good student, and it's painful to me because she couldn't participate in sports, and we lost a good Guilderland student. So I don't want to see that happen again. I just want to make sure we're not limiting anybody's potential on either end.
Oh, Luciana?
So I'll add another aspect. So we talk about a gap. Are we talking about comparing ourselves to our own district? Or are we going to look at the suburban council, the state? What do we want to use as like a criteria for comparison?
I mean, I was thinking of, wherever they are, basically comparing to themselves, improving, and whatever that means. But I guess that's when I'm thinking about achievement gap and opportunity gap, I'm thinking about like the student individually, but not necessarily comparing to other schools. But there is a an aspect of that, right? Like if we're talking about the rankings, that's generally who we're compared to. I know I don't speak for everybody. I just really don't care that much about the rankings. Gloria? Oh, I'm sorry, Barb, and then Gloria.
I'm glad Blanca mentioned the higher achieving students, because I think one of the things that really this district hasn't served all that well is your higher achieving student. We limit the number of people that can take honors classes. We limit the number of people that can take, advanced math as 8th graders. And we've done this for years and years and years. And by doing so, I do think that we're capping those kids. And so I just hope we keep them in the mix as well, and maybe open up more opportunities, for more kids to take the higher level classes. I don't know if it would help our rankings or not, but I do care about the rankings. As I said, just purely from the standpoint of getting new people coming to the district. And I tell you, you talk to real estate people, and as I said before, the first question that they'll ask if they're coming from out of town and don't know the area is, which school districts do you recommend? And I mean, I think that's a fact of life.
Gloria?
Well, to Barbara's point, the thing is that people are looking for different things. Some people will come and see what we have and be very happy. Others will be looking for other pieces. So our challenge as a school district is to make sure we're providing for all types of kids and all types of learners, which is a major, task. And to what Alonzo asked, the discussion began talking about our own kids. We were looking at the ESSA data, and we were seeing very clearly that certain groups of kids, large groups of kids, were not doing well. They were falling through the cracks, and that raised our concern. And that's an issue we took on right away when we did that as that special board meeting we had. So it began by looking at our own kids and making sure that our kids are achieving. All kids are having the opportunity to achieve. That's how the discussion began. It did not look at how we were doing against other districts. It look at our kids, and there are large groups of kids that are not meeting the minimal standards. Why, we asked ourselves. And those are the kids we started to talk about and target because they were getting lost.
All right, so if you are all ready, why don't we move on to the second one, since I think we have a better idea of what we want to do with this, but it's just not the right time yet. But I think it's good that we have a discussion and add some notes to this. The second one is, where is this? Focus on the whole child. So to promote social emotional health of all students. I think that was the main specific goal in there, correct? Unless you guys see something different. Oh, Gloria, do you have a question?
I'm sorry, Christina, was that me?
Oh, you have your hand went up. I didn't know if you had a question.
Yes, yeah. I just wanted to comment. I did put in the document that I believe that this piece, the emotional needs for students, should be the number one piece on our agenda. I don't know how we move it around, but that needs to be focused on this fall. I know we talked about maybe doing some survey or study of some sort of getting our fingers and our hands around what our kids are dealing with and what our staff are dealing with, so that we can begin to offer them the support they might need to move forward. But I think that's got to be number one, starting probably in the summer, thinking about the needs. Then we can begin, to gather the data from the students and the staff and plan on what the needs are and how we can meet those needs in whatever way. But that won't be for 22-23. I mean, we're looking at, this is a long-term thing.
Dr. Wiles, have you at the district, I guess, like everybody who's involved in this type of work have talked about like what kind of data or impact? I mean, I'm assuming that you're doing a lot of this in terms of the COVID impact. I know that's even before COVID, this is something that we focused on, but obviously this can be a huge part of the mental wellness piece. I don't know if you have anything to say about that.
Well, just a couple things. So I mentioned a little while ago that the social emotional subcommittee is actually focusing on this, and we had pockets of some surveying done this year, but I don't think it was comprehensive enough to tell us enough about where the gaps are and where the needs are for our student population. So I do think that we need to do some kind of a across the board K-12, developmentally appropriate check-in with all of our students and frankly with our staff too, to see where everyone's well-being quotient is as we start the school year. The other thing I just mentioned, and I went to get the data, that there was a couple questions in the how do we measure column for this one. And there's a question about how many students are followed by the mental health clinic. And we currently have 40 students who are being served by the clinic. And then the number of mental health professionals in the district, we have 30, we currently have 32. And by that, I mean, this is counselors, school psychologists, social workers. There's 32, not counting our members of our leadership team that are also school psychologists. Lisa Knowles and Kelly Dioli are both school psychologists. And then we just created the new position. So we'll be at 33 plus the leadership members. And then the other data point that I thought was interesting, there was a question about caseload, and the question was just about social workers. But what I ended up doing was I took the total number of mental health professionals that we have, because their roles overlap a lot. I mean, we've done that triple Venn diagram to try to capture all of that. But if you look at our entire population of mental health professionals, we have one mental health professional for every 150 students in the district. And when our new psychologist comes on, that'll go down to 145. I think that's a very, very good ratio. So the question becomes, how do we best use those people to meet the needs of the students? So just a couple data points that I thought would be helpful to know.
Barb?
Those numbers sound really good, but if you were to take out Kelly and take out Lisa and the new psychologists that we have on board, they don't really have student contact in the sense of direct contact, to say a social worker would, or even.
Yeah, they're not counted in that ratio. I didn't count them in that.
Oh, you didn't? Okay. That makes me feel better. Thank you.
Rebecca?
I think those are really impressive numbers. I think, though, we have to acknowledge that it is an underrepresentation, because a lot of students get mental health counseling outside of school. And probably, I don't, speaking just for myself, I think the bulk of kids get counseling outside of school. And there's no way to really capture those numbers, So I think we're looking at wonderful people who are serving this need within the school, but there's many additional kids that aren't counted in that number.
Great point. Let's see, Blanca? Oh, did you put your hand down there?
My comment was really similar to Rebecca's, except additionally, I actually thought that number was high, but I'm wrong. One caseworker to every 150, that's normal. It's alarming to me as a nurse. It seems like a lot of people, but obviously it's different. But that's a good number.
I think the working number is 1 for every 250 is what the professional organizations for school mental health. Yeah.
Okay. Ready.
Dr. Wells, can you just remind me, so you said the social emotional subcommittee, is that district-wide? I forgot what that group is.
So when we were reopening back, I think it was in June, we created this reopening steering committee, which, by the way, continues to meet every Thursday. And there was just so much work to do that we created 6 other subcommittees. And those are, I mean, there's facilities, there's instruction, HR, extracurriculars, health and safety, and there's always one that I forget. So, and each of those has about 20 people on them, including parents, teachers, other staff members, administrators, and they often broke into smaller working groups to do an actual, you know, topic or project. And so that's who's working on this now.
So those groups have continued to meet during the year, all of the subcommittees too?
No, the overall steering committee met all year. And then the instruction committee and the social emotional committee just kind of got back up and running about 6 weeks ago. Some of the other committees, we haven't brought them back because there hasn't been an obvious need. But should there be, they'll jump back into action.
So would it be fair then to like follow up, I don't know, well, year or not, but at some point later in the year to see what the subcommittee is doing in terms of coming up with a way to capture the mental health or the folks that students are feeling at school? It sounds like this was already being like in the works.
So when the steering committee meets on Thursday, the subcommittees always give a report. So I can, at that point, ask them to obviously give a report, but maybe they can put something together in writing that I can share with the board, whether, you know, at a time when it makes sense. So maybe in June, they'll have a, you know, they'll be at a place where they're ready to report out on where they are.
I think that would make sense because it aligns with, I think, this goal and what we wrote down as ways to measure that are you know, what's happening. I think, you know, I think we all think this is important even without COVID and pandemics, but this has been exacerbated after. So any other thoughts about this? All right, so then we'll move on then. All right, so the next one is focus on diversity. So we have numbers, so we just have number 4 is a specific goal. And I would say this overall goal, we've accomplished some things already, at least in terms of measurable. Does anybody have any comments they want to add? I think, was it Gloria that you wrote there, Denise? Okay. Yeah, I would like to talk about that position too, but does anybody else have anything that they want to add before we start? I mean, I would say that we under measurable we put, is a committee created? Are the individuals we need on the committee? Did they create a charter for the group? So that was done. And coherent framework. I mean, I think we all know that there are that there's a lot of work still being done. It's still at the infancy stage, like Dr. Weil says. It's still pretty new, but there's definitely some things we've already addressed here. But the DEI position, we've never really talked that much about it, so I wanted to hear. I know, Gloria, you put some thoughts down. Did you want to share? Yeah, you're muted.
Sorry. I think it's important that the board get right on establishing the parameters for this position, the goals, kind of thing, that we work closely, that we follow closely what this person will be doing, working on, and the relationship between that person and the DEI committee. I see that as an integral relationship in terms of the leadership that can be provided to a very huge group of people, and a very energetic group of people, I have to add. I think a very committed group, and well represented by the community, which I think is an excellent positive thing. So I think as we move forward, as this person comes on board, the board needs to be on top of, establishing those, the clear job description before the interviews start, at least having our input into that, and then help to kind of keep track of the goals that this person is working on and monitor their work with the committee.
Let's see, Luciana?
I think this is a goal that we've done very well with. We met the initial goal of creating a committee. Maybe we should modify it since we've already done that. We have the committee established. They have their charter, and maybe we should change it to do the things that Gloria just mentioned. We could start to move forward with that and modify it to now set up the DEI administrator position.
Yeah, that's a good point. Like, I want to keep it the original one, so we can say that we did that, because otherwise we won't have track that we did anything. Okay. But then we can add to it. I think you're right, Luciano, that this is something now that we're adding to this because the position was created, and that will be another good way to keep a measure of how we're doing. I just wanted to add that I don't know if we haven't talked, Dr. Wells, about that position and what that will look like, and I'm guessing that you guys have probably already done some planning of what that is, but if we had a chance to give some input about that, I know that because it's one person for seven buildings, in the terms of who they report to and that kind of thing, it would make sense. Just two things I'm thinking about. One is that they report to you and to Damien, so that way it's consistent across all 7 buildings, but then they're also physically in the buildings with with students and teachers. You know what I mean? So they're not at district office making decisions that will impact the buildings, but they're never there. You know what I mean?
So I have been gathering sample job descriptions of this position in other entities. I got a little interrupted on that work last week, but I'm gonna go back and look at it because I'm thinking we can draft, a sample job description. The board can take a look at it. I mean, we wouldn't post this honestly until the budget has been approved by our voters. So we're kind of gearing up for what are we looking for? What's the role? Who would this person report to, et cetera. So we're working on that right now. Can hopefully get you a draft shortly.
Blanca, and then Kelly, did you have your hand up too?
Yeah, I did, but I took it down. I was just gonna say real quick, as I was a little bit I was kind of wondering. I don't want this person to report to the board I mean, I feel like it's the administration's job to come up with a description, and Marie and Seema, you kind of just chatted about that a little bit. So that's where I was going to leave it. I didn't want to be like, we need to get, tell them what to do or what their progress is or whatever. So that was my only concern.
Blanca?
I'm going to hold my comment.
I just wanted to respond to yours, Kelly. Like, I didn't mean it in a way that was like micromanaging, but in terms of like overall like philosophy that, that it's not just in one building. And so to get it across all 7, it's kind of like having a coordinator to see from start to finish. So you can really see how that work, transfers over the years from elementary, middle to high school.
Right. Yeah, I totally get it. I was just a little bit, I'm like, well, I don't really know. I think I obviously think it's a fantastic idea. I'd love to see how other districts have used that position, or like the job description is like Marie has said. That was my only kind of comment. I didn't want to, that's it. Thanks.
Gloria, you have your hand up?
Yeah, I would definitely be against any micromanaging, but I know that this whole diversity thing came from the board. I mean, we really wrestled with this and we brought it forward. So I think we have an obligation and a responsibility to just kind of oversee and keep an eye on things and keep it in our conversations at board meetings, because it's a new initiative, and I think it's a vital initiative. Our community is extremely interested in it. So just kind of keeping it in the front of everybody's mind and asking questions is a good way of keeping things moving.
I also wanted to add, oh, and then I'll have you, Blanca. I was just going to add quickly too, when that position, eventually when the hiring happens, to think, just to be like strategic about who's involved in that, because there's so many different, I guess, stakeholders in it. So I think we just want to be cognizant about, and, not just like whoever's available. I know sometimes it comes down to that because everybody's schedules are crazy, but just to think about that there's representatives from, if we're saying that this person's job is going to align somewhat with the committee or do any kind of interaction with that committee, then maybe somebody from there is on there. Blanca?
That's actually what I was going to say. That it would be great if we could have other folks involved with the hiring process. I agree with Kelly. I didn't want it to come across that way. I'm more interested in like the hiring piece. I think it would be great if we could include members of the community. You know, Seema, because you work in academia, like when they're going to hire a new professor, they invite the students to do like a Q&A session with them or something. I'm envisioning it might be nice if we could have like an opportunity for the candidates to be either interviewed or Q&A'd by groups in the community, whether it be the Diversity and Inclusion Committee or us. I don't know, something along those lines.
Right, or maybe somebody, or maybe a student who's already involved in that work. Maybe there's a student representation on the hiring committee or something like, or at least for maybe part of it, something like that.
I think Marie could probably speak to the composition of these committees because I know they're very diverse. Parents are there, PTA representatives, the parents, the students are, there's lots of different levels of these interview committees, and maybe Marie wants to speak to that, to make sure everybody is aware that it is a complex thing.
Yeah, I would work with Regan on this to draw from many stakeholders. I think probably beyond even some of our, typical, we would reach out to the Teachers Association, but I think we would also reach out to some of our non-instructional employees to see if they would like to serve on it. I definitely think we'd reach out to Well, I think this last part of this goal really circles back to our very first goal in the conversation we had about, so how is it that we're going to define what it is we want for our students? What does success look like? And I do think Gloria's right, and I know Ben has talked about this very thing too, that if we don't know what it is we want to accomplish, how do we know what the learning environment should be in order to make that happen? So it's really a bigger discussion about what we want to accomplish as a school district, and then how do we create the space in order for that to happen. So I just felt like that it was important to make the point that I think we're full circle on our conversation here.
Yeah, that is a great point, that it's completely related to number one. We can't just make something without knowing what we want from that first. Barb?
Yeah, we talk about future-ready facilities. We've been talking for years now about turf fields, and we're going to be one of, I think, only 5 districts that don't have a turf field. It, as the letter writers have stated, it makes our kids uncompetitive because it's totally different playing on grass versus playing on turf. We have really neglected over the years our athletic facilities, and we've been unafraid to put it up as a bond issue. I would put it up as a separate bond issue. Let the voters decide. And the other things that I've been hearing, again, somebody mentioned the aesthetics of our various schools, the landscaping, the particularly at the high school, the problems with so many toilets having to be closed so often because our sewer system is 50 years old and has sort of been replaced piecemeal. And I know part of that was part of the larger bond issue that went down. But I think Neil was sort of hinting at it, that maybe we don't do our 5-year bond issues, but we maybe next year put forth a bond issue to do some of these basic repairs that we missed doing because we didn't get the larger bond issue. But again, I really think that we really have to put that turf field to a vote, and the sooner the better. I think we did some preliminary engineering investigation with our current bond issue, if I'm not mistaken, from Cliff. And Marie, maybe you can update me on that. But I think he was, because the engineers and stuff were there, I thought he was going to basically get some dollar figures and get a feel for what it would cost. What if any of you have ever been out at these fields? I mean, they're in the spring, they are just total sponges, and it's not safe for the kids. And it just, as I said, if all these other suburban districts can do it, why can't we do it? So I guess I would just ask, how can we put it up as a separate bond issue and let the voters decide? Because I think last year we got a petition, 700 something people signed it. This year there's been, a constancy about people from field hockey to football to lacrosse, pointing out the safety issues, pointing out the financial issues. They have to go to Aframs and rent space there. So I guess, Marie, when could we do something like this if we decided to do it?
Well, tomorrow evening, Cliff Nooney will be part of Neil's report, and he will be giving an update to the board on the last Business Practices Committee meeting where all of these topics were just discussed. So tomorrow.
Yeah, I was just going to say, Barb, I think I don't disagree with what you're saying, but I think let's not get in the weeds today if we're talking about the bigger goals. Luciano?
All right, so I think this is a goal that we could improve on a little bit going forward. This year obviously cybersecurity was weak, but we are working on that. We're fixing it. Another thing, we had to close Pine Bush for a day because one of the boilers broke. There was no heat. So we're talking about, what we want the future to look like, but we also have to balance that with maintaining the current situation that we have. We got to make sure that the roofs don't leak, that there's heat, and aesthetics are important too, but we got to make sure we have the basic stuff too, and that stuff's maintained and updated regularly so that we don't have to close schools for days, because that's really a big deal. Like, that's a missed learning opportunity, a missed day of school for those kids because we didn't maintain the boiler as we should have. So we just got to balance it, and that's an important part of the capital project that's coming up, and we'll learn more about it tomorrow night. But that's something going forward that I think we need to work on.
I saw some hands and then they disappeared. So, Kelly, did you have your hand up? Oh, no? Thumbs down. Okay. Let's see. I mean, I think, Dr. Wiles said it really well. I think this goal is tied really close to number one. I don't think we even purposely wrote it like coming to full circle like that, but you can't really do one without the other. I don't think we can really talk about vision of facilities. But I know before COVID, we had plans to go visit. It was, I think, Queensbury, and then there was another school in Massachusetts, if I remember correctly, that I think DOT had already gone to, or they were in touch with.
That was for work around equity and diversity. It was Needham Central School. We were going to, because Erin Sika, our former assistant principal from the high school, is there. So for facilities, we did talk about Queensbury, and I actually did follow up with Kyle Gannon, who's the superintendent there, and whenever we're ready, they're ready for us. So.
Okay. So yeah, whenever we are allowed to and safely take a field trip, then
we can do it now.
Oh, we can? Okay.
So yes.
I know that you probably have a lot going on right now, but if you want to, if everybody sounds okay with that, I would love to go visit, sooner than later. This was something that we talked about probably over a year ago. Beautiful. Good idea, Ben. Can we do that, Dr. Wileson?
Sure.
I think
I'll get some dates from Kyle, and then Deb can send around a doodle.
That sounds great. Thank you. I love field trips. This will be fun. I don't go anywhere, so. That's all I have for the agenda items, unless people have any other last minute comments they want to add to the goals list. I think this is great to keep track and then go back and see. It's really obviously strange year with COVID, so they'll just have to be adjusted and fixed, to whatever's happening in the school year. Blanca?
So I just want to say, because it's only been 1 year for me, I'm actually very pleasantly surprised at how many things we addressed on this. So kudos to everybody. I think, it wasn't a perfect year by any means, but we did get some good stuff done.
All right, so we'll keep it short because I think tomorrow we have a longer meeting. And so I will ask for a motion to adjourn. Blanca, second. Rebecca, all in favor? Passes 9-0. Thank you, everybody. Have a good night.
Good night, everyone.